Welcome to a Drop Tent Media production.
So today on Seriously Dad, we get serious about education. We have a good friend of mine, colleague, school counselor, has worked with students of all types of backgrounds, and Al brings the questions. Al brings some great questions. He's got some philosophies on education, and it was cool to have two educators kind of talk about that and really dive into the things that the average parent's thinking are, hey, what could we do different in education, and why isn't that happening? So stay tuned.
Seriously,
Dad. Two father comedians out of Philadelphia.
Seriously,
Dad.
Dad. Seriously,
Dad.
seriously, seriously.
All right, here we are. We're in studio with our first non-comedian. I'm breaking stuff because I'm not in my seat. I think everybody's going to notice, and they're going to be like, why did Jay move? Is he being punished? And I think so, but no. No, I'm excited because we have a guest here who is a really good friend of mine and a colleague of mine and just a really good dude. So we have Noah Michael in this.
Yeah, Noah Michael in the house. What's up, Noah Michael?
Thanks, guys.
Welcome, brother.
Thanks for
Welcome,
having
brother.
me.
So why don't you, because they don't know you as well as I do, I would love to, what if you describe to people you meet at a party, what do you say that you do?
What do I say I do at a party?
They'd be like, hey, what do you
When was
do?
the last time we had a party, Noah? Let's say.
Last time at a party? Well, define a party. Because I'm partying all the time. Let's see. If I go to a party, I tell them that, I'm a school counselor.
Nice.
That's what I say.
I didn't know you were going to say
There you go.
teacher, because I know you're not
Yeah.
technically a classroom teacher, but
True. But sometimes, you can spice it up by saying, "Oh, I'm in education."
I'm in it. That's
Yeah.
it. That's it.
That's when they say,
that's
"Oh,
a spectrum of.
You mean teacher?" And I'm like, "Why are you trying to downplay it? It's not a teacher, it's education."
No, that's true. Well, and you did a bunch of different. You ranged a little bit because you were emotional. You focused when I met you. I think emotional support,
Yeah.
like the kids who couldn't necessarily function or needed a break from normal classrooms.
That's right.
Cool. So I got a random question. That's not really random, but just out of curiosity. Same degree?
For to be a school counselor?
Yeah.
So no, you have to go get your master's degree.
Okay.
And so I got my master's
In education.
in school counseling.
So you get education 4 year,
Correct.
and then you go school
It's-
counselor 4 years. 2 years.
Well, I did the long plan because I'm special myself. So it took, I want to say it took like 5 years to get that done.
Okay.
But it's just having a family or starting off having a family. You kind of got to do the long way versus just banging it out in a weekend.
Did you know you were gonna be a teacher, or a counselor from the get go, or did you know you were gonna be in education?
Yes and no. I mean, when I first started off, when I was in college, right? The first thing that happened was I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I love music.
Okay.
So heavy metal's my thing.
Okay. How heavy we talking? Like Slayer heavy?
Slayer heavy.
Okay.
And harder than that too.
Heavy. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And actually, I just saw a show out in Mechanicsburg, Ugly Kid Joe. Do you guys remember
Yes,
them from the
yes,
90s?
yeah, yeah.
And they just played last Friday, or this past Friday. It was awesome.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
I hear metal and I don't all I see is metal. I see physical metal.
Yeah.
I don't know what it sounds like. I don't know, but I always hear people say they like it, so I'm like, it must be good.
People who like it really like it.
Oh yeah, if you're into it, you're into it.
You're a metalhead, right?
Yeah,
You're
that's
like a
right.
metalhead.
I don't know how I fell into that, but that's what happens. But I will say, so for me, I started my career off when I was in college. I didn't know what I want to major in, so this professor came up to me and said, you should do this program, and it was called Learning Hand in Hand. And that program basically paired up a special education student with from a local magnet school that was right on campus with someone who was interested in going down the field of
It's
education.
like role models. It was like a
That's
real
exactly
yeah,
what it
yeah.
is. That's it. And I'm like, me? Of all people? So I did that for a few semesters just to have fun, and I really grew an attachment to this kid. And that's when I realized that's what I want to.
Oh, that's good. Sounds like Big Brothers Big Sisters program. You guys know about this, Big Brothers?
Yeah.
You know that I tried so hard to get matched up and I never could find a match for Big Brothers Big
Really?
Sisters, and you're like, oh man, I'm that unwanted, that Big Brothers and Big Sisters.
Like, yeah,
Couldn't
there's
find
others
a
out
Noah
there. Yeah, we got people
to
waiting,
come
but there's others
yeah,
out there.
Like,
There's others
like
waiting too.
others,
Okay,
like-
yeah.
No, but that's
Yeah.
cool. So that's I think that's the most authentic way to have it happen, is because I think what happens in education is people think they want to be a teacher without the real experience. So I'm grateful to see that programs are out there, because you need to know what you're getting. It's like being in a marriage or a relationship.
Yeah.
You want to like live with them or have some kind of semblance of what it's really like before you move in.
Well, I think I agree. I think that when it comes to teacher, like educators, you know, there's two people. There's two different types of people who do it, and there's two different types of outcome. There's like I maybe one would be like an educator. Like I have a couple teachers that I think about all the time.
Educator, teacher. Yeah.
I think about him all the time. Like he's passed away. He was my shop teacher, but I run his sayings and the shit that he taught us like once a day. Here I am, like 20-some years later. And then there's people who just like showed up, like they were in the room, they collected the homework, they gave the grade, but there was not like
There was not a
connection.
connection.
Yeah, and there's the people who come in with that connection. They're the people who like really change the world. You know what I mean? They're the ones that, like really get it done. But the other ones are kind of like, yeah, he's cool.
I think, you know what's interesting now, being on the other side of that curtain, like I think too that every teacher has that within them. It's just not with every student. You know what I mean? Because like sometimes like
shit.
that teacher who for
Yeah.
you was just, you're like,
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't
just-
that.
No,
it
no,
was
that
you.
means that person just matching with another
no,
student.
but
I
like
think they're
that,
a
you
shitty
just
teacher.
weren't. They weren't. I think sometimes teachers gravitate to the kid that they think they were.
Right.
Like I did a lot of. We have teachers also have like duties when they're not teaching, and one of mine was like a dean, where you had to like take the referrals. It was called discipline team, and so you get a referral from a teacher who wrote a kid up. You had then to go talk to the kid, find out their side of the story, talk to the other teacher, kind of investigate a little bit. And I always realized that the kids I was calling in, I had a good relationship with. And when I looked at the teacher who was writing them up, it was just that, not that they didn't have relationships with the kids too. It's just that kid was the opposite. That might have been
They
the
didn't
bully
match
that
up.
they
They
had in
didn't match up.
school, and they were putting baby in a corner,
Ah.
and baby was clawing.
And then here I am
that's
thinking
what
that
happened.
other teacher's just a bad teacher who doesn't
But
care.
I think
we're
that's
just
an
not on the
honest
same
thing.
page.
But what I'm saying is, I think that's honest, and I think that's how most people would think about it. But my hope is that that teacher at least has some kid that they
Who feels the same way about 'em.
connect and do. But like, I think it's tough because I have teachers like that. Now, was that college professor for you?
That was a
kind
college
of teacher.
college professor, like first year of
But
college.
did you get like? Did you guys have a connection?
Like
do you
that was
think?
person
Is that
was
why
your
you took
advisor
their
or just a
advice?
teacher?
Yeah, it was someone that I was like really close to, and someone that I
Nice.
respected. So going back to your point, like it was someone. It wasn't an elementary school teacher, but someone in college.
Yeah.
But the other part of the story is, I actually started going on. I was undecided and thought about going for radio. Like that's what I wanted to do.
Oh yeah.
And
You're hearing the voice.
That voice, yeah.
Yeah, it's it's like my porn voice, but it's all the time. It's when my wife.
You don't even
loves
have to
it.
try. Yeah, she's so lucky.
That's what I say too. But really, like I didn't like declare my major as communications. I kind of just did it undecided, and I ended up getting a radio show for like 4 years in college, and I loved it. It was a heavy metal show, and
That's cool.
And I feel like at the end of it, I ended up I got my fill or my full out of it. You know, I just felt like all right, I kind of did this.
And how long ago was that?
This was 2002 to 2006.
Yeah. I mean, radio was pretty saturated, right? Like,
It was college radio.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah,
much?
no, you had to
how
go
many
from college
listeners?
radio to-
I had a college radio
right.
station.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't think anybody listened to mine. It was like over the internet too. It wasn't like
Oh, yeah, no
radio
one was
waves.
listening to it.
You know
No
what I
one
mean?
was
Like it
listening
was
to us.
like nobody was.
it was cool
asking.
though. I think it's cool they offered that, but I don't know how much people listen. Not
No,
to be
but
rude
that's
to
cool.
anybody.
So now,
but-
But it's so much fun. It
Yeah.
was so much fun.
Well, Al, I know Al had a question I thought was interesting. We were talking about the school day because
Yeah.
you've been at elementary, middle school, and did you ever experience high school?
High
I mean,
school?
seventh really isn't that different from
No, I did high school, but it was an alternative school, and that was my first year out of college. So I was over at
Seriously?
Oh, do you know what he says? Alternative school? Do you know what that means?
Is that a school for maybe people who graduate after a certain age or have been incarcerated?
More so the latter.
Okay.
They could have been in juvie, and then or the school districts have sent them out of their
because they just
their
couldn't
home
remediate
school.
in-house.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, so this actually lines up perfectly.
Yeah.
So you're the guy for this. All right. I feel like I cut you off. I apologize if I did. But my concept for a perfect school day for a youngster. So the first thing is I think school starts too early. I think that a young mind, like they need to sleep. I think they should get the opportunity to sleep, and having them wake up early, because when you get out in the real world, you're going to have to wake up early. I think
You're
that's
not
a little,
alone. That's a hot topic.
I think that's a little too heavy.
That's a hot topic right now.
I think that the day should start with physical activity, real physical activity, sweating,
like
breathing
chopping
hard.
blocks.
No,
and
no, no,
we're
like
making license plates in the yard.
No, like a serious
World's
gym class.
strongest
That's an
man.
alternative school activity.
like a serious gym class, like a real like the
Like
gym
you
class.
want a Rocky gym.
Yeah. I want dudes and young ladies to be like, wow, that was hard. Then I think the classes are a little too long. I don't think they should be so long, and I don't think they should be every day.
Could you imagine a middle
I think-
schooler doing that kind of regiment? And at least we get till 1 o'clock before they smell. By your program,
Oh, they're
going
gonna
to
read. They're gonna read by
9 a.m.
yeah. Breakfast is gonna stink. But I don't think they need to be every day.
Right.
I don't think you need math at 7 or 10 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, Friday for an hour. I don't think you need that. I think you could skip a day, and I don't think the classes should be as long. And then the classes should end with tech, wood shop, electronics, something like that, where you use your hands. Maybe you're a little more creative, or you learn a skill, something like that. And I think that would be the ideal school day.
That's interesting. What's your take on that?
Have off on Wednesdays? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Half day on Wednesday?
No, full day.
Okay.
But and the day wouldn't be as long though. So you wouldn't be there from 8 to 2.
Or
8 to
usually
3.
it's like
It's either like
2:30,
7 till
2:30.
2:30
Okay.
or
Yeah.
8 till
In
know,
high school,
7
we got off
hours,
at
pretty much
3:17,
7
and you
hours.
wouldn't need to be there all day long, like in a classroom. And I'll tell you why I think that. I think the energy levels would be better, and I think the way we learn, we don't need to sit down for an hour long and just kind of have like the way class is for the most part is kind of like lecture.
well,
slash receiver.
that's so that'll be a little different now because it is a little different than that now. Like in terms, it's not a sit and get for most of the classes anymore. It is
Okay.
a lot about
Good.
collaborative activities, project-based learning.
Yep.
So it is a little different than I had a history teacher, and we went to something called block scheduling. Have you ever heard of this? So basically, you do the opposite. You do double periods. So every class is 90 minutes instead of 45, but you don't have it every day, so you can do an alternating
Okay.
schedule. So you're only doing like 4 subjects a day.
Okay.
Now I went to a school where they did it for a whole semester that way. So you had your math, science, Spanish, and gym every day, just those 4 for half the year. So in 45 days, you technically did the number of hours
Right.
that you would have in that, and then you switch.
What was the
Some
outcome?
schools alternate it.
Do those black schools do better?
So I mean, if the teachers are properly trained, ours weren't. They just
All right.
threw them to the wolves.
Right.
So my history teacher literally was the guy who just had a notebook and he started at the one end of the board and there were 4 blackboards on the wall, and he would just go and draw until he got to the end and go back to the beginning and start over. So when block scheduling happened, he just wrote twice as much. He must have had carpal
Jeez,
tunnel.
right.
Jesus
And it was like a
Christ.
chalkboard writing cursive, like
Shit all over your hands. and
it
stuff.
was like, and so when it's done properly, the argument like that is like, okay, you can alternate days, so you get a break. It's kind of like college, you know?
you don't need. I don't think you need.
you
it.
know, but you're still there the amount of time. We're still there but the goal is to do a mini lesson, have them do something with it,
And then do it
and
on
then
the-
maybe present or have some opportunity to expand and do
An
projects.
independent kind of skill, right?
Yeah, so you but it's all what you do with it. I mean, you could have the framework, but if you don't fill it
So
properly,
let's start the morning.
Yep.
Right. You said that a lot of people are talking about it, and I've heard buzz. Do you think that the school day should start later? How'd I land?
I
I-
agree with him. It's just logistically it'd be hard.
It doesn't really make a difference to me.
Okay,
So it really doesn't. I think that
50%. I got 50% of the teacher
I'm s-
population on my side. Okay. All right. I just
doesn't
gotta
matter.
I got to keep my stats.
because you also have to think about parents of that community too. So
Yes. Yeah. I understand. So that's why it's a perfect. It's not. I don't know if it could ever really happen.
Right.
But like, do you think a child being able to sleep longer?
I do agree. But the thing is, it also comes to parenting too. So if kids are allowed to have their cell phones in their rooms,
yeah.
and when they go to sleep, So it doesn't matter if they go to bed at 9:30, 10:30, 11:30 at night. I feel like if the school day started later, they're just going to stay on their cell phones later into the night.
Oh, okay.
So you have that shift. I do think that kids need more sleep. So I'm more in agreement to starting later, but selfishly, I like getting out of work earlier.
Well, again, also, like,
Yeah,
why is
yeah,
it on the
makes sense.
school? We're with these kids for 7 hours.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about how we're using the other 17. Right?
Yeah, the
I'm
math
not a
checks out,
guy.
yeah.
I'm wearing
I had to
math
think about- I had
shirt.
to think
I'm
about
not-
it the other day.
But
That's pretty good.
why are we being so hyper focused on the smallest portion of their day? And to Noah's point, and because that's what happens. I've sat in on a bunch of these meetings. We did a whole sleep studies. Our school district invested a ton of money in investing in this. Experts coming in because there was a huge push to do that. Because the way we do is elementary starts an hour later, so we start at 7:30 at the 7th through 12th level. K through 6 starts at 8:30. So they're saying, well, what if we flipped it? So that way, the older kids were home to get the younger kids on the bus, but then the reverse is then they're not there after school to get them because the parents' work schedules,
Right.
and then sports got into it. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden now when are sports going to start? Now you're
And then
an
the
hour
busing
later,
for
and
the
how do you do the
sports.
busing? And
Right.
it's a whole can of worms as it gets very far away from the point. When you get to the point of it, which is what you were getting at, it's never anything in education's never about if it's really good for the kids. It's because it's amazing, and that's what surprised me. Because I go in with my heart on my sleeve like that.
Right.
I'll never forget my first day as a teacher. I was a student teacher, just out of college, 21 years old, first day. All the teachers are in the auditorium. The superintendent comes to address them and do the kickoff meeting. And the superintendent starts talking, and the teachers were talking like the kids that they would be complaining about. And I'm just like, oh my God, they're not being quiet. They're trying to speak. Why are they not doing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
how you gonna pass this
and
on?
then you
You
go to
can't
like
even-
lunch, and you're thinking we're going to be talking about important stuff, and all they're doing is bitching about this, why, and that. It's like any break room of a restaurant, like they're going to be. But it's like that's the realities of it is you're putting so much effort when you're in that classroom with those kids that when you're not with them, you turn into them a little bit, but it's just you have to because you just have to recharge. That's why people talk about the summers. I don't think we need the whole summer off, but you need breaks built in because we all need to recharge. We had a guy on, Chris Monty, talking about how his wife, when she's a teacher, is a middle school special needs teacher. She comes home. He's been home with the kids all day. He thinks there's going to be this trading of the baton.
Right.
And she's
she's
like,
like,
I need
nah,
to lay
nah.
down because she needs to recharge her battery because she was just in charge of maybe 100 kids that weren't hers for 7 hours. Yeah, I don't know. It's amazing how within education you think you're doing something, but the reality of it.
It's like I remember when I was in psychology. I think they teach you, and I don't even know if this is true anymore. I may be making this up, but I think they told us that the attention span of a human being doesn't last that long, and you're really like over an hour. Like I think it's over like 40 minutes, but you're going to start
It's
to
worse
check
now.
out.
It's worse now.
right? But then you go to like college and you have a 3-hour class.
Yep.
And you're like, so you don't. Do you believe the shit that you told me? Because you told me that this doesn't work, and now you took my money and you're doing it in the least efficient way that all education says, and I'm paying you to be educated in the least efficient manner.
There's
And you
a
wonder, like,
TED talk by a guy named James McWhorter. No, that's a different TED talk. Chris Emdin. EMDIN. So Chris Emdin does teacher education programs, but he focuses on urban education, the Black community, and he does teacher education. So he's training teachers. And so he has this amazing TED Talk that I show because I often run sessions for our new teachers in the beginning of the year. And it's called Teaching Teachers Magic. And his premise is that magic can be taught. Like you see and what he does in the education program, he's like, education is being taught by people who are telling me to be engaging in the most disengaging ways, which is exactly what you're saying. You're telling me to go out, do this, this, and this, but you're doing it in a manner that's disengaging.
Right.
And that's the whole premise of how he starts it. But it's like this beautiful, and he sends, in his program, he sends the teachers out. He's like, you got to go out to the rap concerts. You got to go out to the barber shop. You got to go to the Black church. And you got to see how these people command attention. And can we take from that and put that into teacher education programs so that like when the preacher lowers his voice and slaps the pulpit, everybody's back up and can I get an amen? And that call and response are the same kind of things that we as comics do to make sure the audience is still with us. And he's saying do that because that's what you're saying, Al, is exactly what's happening in there.
And that's understanding the culture of the kids and where they come from.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what color skin you have. It doesn't matter what religion you are. But if you can understand how people function, how people get along, and the whole concept of family, then that keeps an open mind for the kids and how they gravitate towards you.
Yeah.
So it's not so much the content that you're teaching within the classroom, whereas a counselor, the big magic moment it's not about anything like that. It's the connection that you have with those kids. So if you can find that connection with those kids and they seek you out too, that's where the learning happens, no matter what the learning is.
They're not going to remember a verb I told them to conjugate. They're going to remember how they felt when they were around me. Point in case, had a show at Soul Joel's did this late night show. In the audience was a girl who I had who graduated 12 or 13 years ago. Hadn't seen her since, hadn't thought about her, wasn't someone, but she came, she's like, I saw you on this, I wanted to come, and her husband live right down the road. They came over, and after, she's like, do you even remember me? Like, that's what she said to me when she saw me, because like, she was like, I was so bad in your class, and like, I was the senior, and it was all these other sophomores and freshmen, but she's like, I didn't make her feel bad about it. Like I was like, if she was cooperative, whatever, I kind of let her find a way that she could contribute without like making her be obedient to whatever standard I thought I was doing. And they're going to remember how you made them feel, not what you taught them. And so sometimes I think you got to realize that.
They don't care what you know until they know that you care. Is that
that's it? Yeah, that's a guy. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, there
you got it.
So wait, so we're starting too early or not?
So I think I personally, I think I agree with the concept, but I don't.
It would never happen.
It'll never
right.
take.
This is like the perfect. This is the perfect day.
Yeah, you're open in so
but
many.
If it were possible, starting later, would you think would be letting kids sleep would be the move?
But
I would say so, but again, you have a lot of different variables.
Because you're saying that they're just going to be doing whatever the fuck they're doing.
That's it. It's just you're gonna prolong. It's gonna be later into the
you
evening.
take a magic pill thinking it's gonna work, and it's like exercise. Like, oh yeah, do this thing, but you also have to eat a balanced meal and work out. I was like, well, if I could do that, I wouldn't want this pill.
Right. It's like me in the summertime. Oh, I have off in the summer as a teacher, right? So I'm gonna start working out in the summertime. That's when it's gonna start.
Yeah.
That's right. It always is gonna start like that. And you think you're going to have time, and the next thing you know, it's August 15th, and you're like, what the hell happened?
All right, so we'll go to the next one. Physical. Start your day with something physical, like a serious gym class.
I'm all about it.
And make gym class, phys ed, health, all that like important again.
Yep.
You agree with that one?
I'm completely in agreement.
Okay, I got both teachers on the panel. Thank you.
Yes, but here's the thing.
I'm keeping my stats here.
No, you're good. You're winning. But again, it comes down to logistics of how do you do that. So if it's first period every single day is the gym, or it doesn't have to be the gym, right?
Field,
it could be
pool,
outside,
gym,
football if it's not
football field, if it's not, yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the PE teacher or gym teacher. It could be really anyone doing that.
Right.
Well, they did that for testing. We had testing, and before testing got started, you saw kids lap in the hallway with their teacher. Like they built in 15 minutes of to like get them awake or do whatever that is.
Is that right? Okay, when they had testing. Well, I just think, number one, I think health and wellness is important. I think we're losing that in America. It's not being taught. When I was in high school, gym class was only cool if you're like boys were in the gym class with you, right? I feel like years ago, like all gym class was intense. And maybe that's because I watched too much Back to the Future and Remember the Titans.
Our guy rolled a basketball rack out and said, have a good time.
Now that was cool when your boys were in the class.
You could put it together. If you didn't, you just walk the track.
You four girls stand over there. It's gonna be me and Chris or Jason and Keith. You guys stay over there. We're gonna have fun. So, but I think that's become a joke, and it was when I was in high school. But I think starting your day with something physical would help manage the energy level, drain the energy. Yep. So now the focus is going to be there. It's like walking your dog before you go to get in the car with your dog. That way the dog's tired. The dog can sit still. Not to call our youth dogs, but You
Well,
get
they
what
should
I'm
all,
saying?
yeah. I mean, that's smart. It's like before you go on a hot date, you take
You
care
do-
of
yeah,
yourself.
exactly.
And I think
How do you
maybe
mean?
when you
Define
get to
hot
middle
date.
school, that might not be a bad idea. Before these girls are going to be wearing what they're wearing, maybe these kids they just need to like.
Mr. Yoder, what do you mean by take care of yourself?
And what do you mean by hot date?
What are these concepts?
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Gotcha. Yeah, but to the scientific point of like, we know now also there's endorphins that are released, especially early. Yeah, I mean, those are. I think you're hitting on something.
That would make
there.
some serious sense. Like
So-
you got to swim X amount of laps, or you got to run this, or you got to
When they
play
still do
this.
swimming.
They
which is
do.
good.
You got to do it, and
Yeah.
then we'll go to class. I think
So let me challenge you on that thought.
Challenge away,
You
bro.
ready?
Yeah.
You ready?
Hit it. Hit it.
Okay. So let's just say there are kids who really they don't want to do swim. They don't want to run. And they'll do it, but maybe when they wake up and it's later on in their day. Some kids might be more musically driven or artistically, right, driven. So would art be okay first thing in the morning in lieu of having the PE piece of it?
No, but art is not neglected. Art is at the end of the day.
Yeah, but here's the
Art would be at the
there's
end of the
also
day.
the logistics of it.
Right.
You have 1,600 kids.
Yeah.
You can't have them all.
Yeah, I mean, I know that like,
Which
this
is
is just
good.
the perfect. This
Well,
is
no,
the
that's what I mean.
perfect
Like
day.
that's the thing about
But-
education. I think for a lot of like, because it is what happens within education is you have the people who are on the inside of it. They're like, well, we know the inside and how it works. Then you have the community members who just want to see X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And then you have your like school board who's like sometimes a mishmash of
Yep.
that. And it's just the system is beautiful and chaotic at the same time because it's being driven by people from the community because it should be. You're curating your community. These people should be growing up to be future business owners in your town,
Yep.
future parents
Right,
in your
right, right, right.
town.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it right, not to say that they won't move off and go off somewhere else, but you would hope that some of them would want to stay and give back to that
And be
community.
part of this
Our
world, yeah.
school is really big on having teachers who went there are now sometimes teachers there, and I think that feeds because really, like not to get all education-y, but when you study education, there's a guy John Dewey that you study who's like one of the founding fathers of modern American education, and his thing was like you're a facilitator, you're a manager as a teacher. Your goal is to curate. And not to necessarily be a sage on a stage, and you're there to curate. And that's really now when we think about Google, ChatGPT, all of these things, we're not meant to be a Wizard of Oz. We're a man and a woman behind a curtain, but we're supposed to be there to help them decipher what's good and what's not. Because I'm pretty sure it was Abe Lincoln who said, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet." And so I think
Was that him?
it's my favorite meme. I had a teacher, a history teacher, has it in his classroom, and I'm like, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the energy level. I think that's still and the health and wellness aspect.
Yeah, I
is
think it's
pretty
great.
important
I think
also.
I think it's great. There's a video where they look at the automotive industry, the medical industry, and education, and they show like maybe over 40 years. And it's amazing to see how cars had changed, how medicine has changed,
and education
and
the same.
education was just flatlined.
Yeah.
And I think it's just slow, but I think it's good that it's slow because you don't want to go too hard and fast with changes and not know because you might not know until
You may
years
turn too hard,
later
and then you're like, "That
it's-
was not the right move," and we turned
And it's-
everything. Everything's pointed that way. And it's like, shit, we did that a little too fast.
It's so tricky. It really is. It's
No, is it okay if I no?
Yeah.
Because Albert's talking about some things that he would like to see change. Is there a big thing that you would like to see change
Oh,
in
shit.
your
That's a great
kind
question.
of
that's it.
experience?
Good question, Neil.
I mean, there's a lot that could be changed.
Right.
Acceptance is a huge one, and it's a hot topic. And unfortunately, a lot of politics make their way into education, where it's like a two-way street there, And on one side, you have just teach, right? It's just teach your content area. Don't do anything else. But on the other side, it's embrace what people come with. Gay, transgendered. You also have religion. You're embracing everything, color of skin, race, ethnicity. So, as I'm getting older and kind of climbing up the path in my career, I'm a big believer in just teach, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that make those students unique. And in order to make them feel comfortable, you have to embrace that. Going back to what we talked about with the culture, right? So, but how much of that is taking away from the math, taking away from the science?
We just talked about this same thing.
I'm kind of like in the middle of it, because right down the middle of it, because I want to.
You got to have a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Or a lot of bit of both.
And that's the beautiful thing about being a counselor, is that what happens behind closed doors, just one-on-one, it allows those kids to be as authentic as possible, and they can really come out of their shell. So, I don't know, to make a change, it's hard to know, because it's very divided across the entire nation with that. So I don't really have the right answer.
Too. And being a public school, that makes it even harder.
I know.
Because you have to be, like I was saying in the last episode, like I sometimes talk about my dad living in Spain because I teach language, I teach Spanish. But in one of the episodes I had to say, like, but I have to use ambiguous language when I talk about my dad, why he lives in Spain and that he's married there. I never say that he's married to a guy.
Right.
Because I don't, and then part of me saying, oh man, I wish I could just say it. But then the other thing is, I only get 45 minutes with the kids and I need to teach the lesson.
Right.
That's going to whole derail the lesson, and that's all they're going to hear. They're going to go home and they're going to be, Mr. Yoder's teaching us X, Y, and Z in the classroom. And I'm just trying to talk. So you got to be very
I got
careful.
a question.
Yep.
Can a student, don't tell me too much about where you work, but can a student just say, I want to go see the counselor, and go see the counselor? Or do they need a referral? Does something need to happen? Or can they just say, I think it's a good time for me to go see the counselor, and do so?
It depends. So if it's an emergency and we have a kid in crisis, or a student that might be crying, could be a relationship breakup, and that teacher has 30 kids that they're trying to teach a lesson, and it's not appropriate, especially at any level, more so secondary, for those kids to kind of just be crying in the middle of class. So that would be an emergency, and those kids can come right down to guidance. But for the most part, kids would fill out a referral form to come see us. And
By the way, you're cracking a beer in the middle of that. It strikes me. That's what we wish we could be doing in the middle of that moment.
Oh yeah, especially in the school building, right?
Do you like that system, or do you think that someone should just be able to, or do you like the way it works?
Well, I think that if kids just came down any which way, or teachers just sent them down, which is a pet peeve of mine, because we have to triage it. As one person who has that relationship with that given child, yeah, they can see someone else. But some of the issues are so tiny that they come with, in my mind.
Okay.
So my perception is, all right, well,
They're pulling a ripcord. Are they just doing this because they know
and it gets them out of
they
class?
can get out?
They-
I had a situation. So there are two things to say about this. One, I had a situation. So there are protocols in place that if things are said, and like a kid had made a statement in class one time where it was like they said that they wanted to die.
Okay.
And that was because they knew that was the verbiage
To get
that
them where
starts
they
the
need to go.
protocol that makes the ship go to get them out of a situation because they were being corrected and they didn't want to be corrected.
Okay.
And so they knew there was the big red button to push. And so the game. So in the high school, what happens, because that's where I spent most of my time, they have what they call a wrap room, which is a student assistance room. And so there is a person there triaging that, and it's separate from guidance, because guidance, that's the other thing. Like, you're trying to help kids like who
Go to
might want to
college, right?
get
Is that-
gifted and might want to, and you're
Right,
end up
like, where
triaging
to go
like
to school.
breakups, and like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
sometimes supposed to be making sure they're getting an education, but you got to do the whole child.
and that's the thing. So if students can come down anytime they want to, I could be in the middle of a suicide assessment with a student. I could be on the phone with a parent who's trying to get their child evaluated for special education services. On the flip side, it could be, just
Someone's going to prom with the wrong person.
that could be that.
They just want to cry, somewhere to cry. And you're like,
And there's
Or
just
they
so
think
much.
their
there's
girlfriend
just
or
so much
boyfriend's
that
cheating
falls
on
under
them.
that.
you're like, none of this fucking matters anyway. But sure.
And then the
Yeah.
social media piece. That's
well,
the
that's
killer,
huge.
guys. That's the one that
The
you think about
cyberbullying.
it. Like when we went to school, that never was an issue. Now, cell phones, it's another world that's like in their pocket or in their locker. So they don't know what
Yeah.
messages are waiting for them that was carryover from the previous night. And then it's a ticking time bomb. And it becomes a school issue.
Yes.
Oh,
And
it always spills over
That's-
into the school, right?
Once it spills over into the school or a message is sent within the school building, that's when it becomes a school issue.
I think but that would be the one thing I would want to change. I think if I would be like, hey, schools from now on,
Yep.
if you are a student at a school, public school, I mean, if my country, pie in the sky dream, right?
Yeah.
Phones are done. Like I would dead zone it. I would literally have technology be like, you can't get access. So if you have a bickering between a student, two students, they can't chat, they can't do anything between classes, they can't do that. Then they go home, they chill out, or they have, of course, we know they're going to jump on the bus on the way home or whatever. But at the very least, they've had time to chill. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
That's just my pitch. Sorry.
I think eventually what will happen is it'll spill over. Like that's what anything. It has to wait till it spills over. But the cyberbullying thing or that cyber piece is huge because it's
That's like
not
the
like
realest shit
avoiding.
going right now.
It's like not avoiding the hallway that the kid always walks down because it's a digital hallway. Like
Yeah.
every hallway is that hallway now. Everybody knows your business.
Yeah, that's like
There's
probably the realest
ghosting
thing going,
kids.
right?
Yeah, I would say
Yeah,
so.
The
to mess with
fake
the
accounts.
mess with the psychological
Yeah,
totally. Well-being of a youngster,
Right.
is
And-
what goes on those phones
It
because it
does.
messes with the grown-ups. I mean, that's the thing. I don't think most grown-ups would admit that they have a problem or even know they have a problem. But it fucks with the grown-ups. The grown-ups are acting like assholes. The grown-ups are missing appointments. The grown-ups are not getting their work done. The grown-ups are getting in fights. So for the kid, it's got to be fucking 30
Learned it
times
by
that.
watching you,
Yeah.
Dad.
Yeah, this is normal behavior. It's what you do.
So and socially, the kids are just not prepared the way when we were younger. You know, they're just so reliant on the cell phone, and it's just on them all the time, and you never know when it's going to blow
Yeah,
up.
our middle school stopped allowing them to have it in class, and this is my first year teaching like that. Where in the high school it wasn't like that, and I gotta say it does make a difference. And if you're more intentional with the Chromebooks and screen down, screen up, and it makes a huge difference because in high school, like those kids, or even like before this episode, we were up there. I'm on my phone doing something.
we're all
you
on
were-
our phone.
You would
Yeah.
ask me a question, and I totally
Yeah.
was like checked
Oh,
out.
human
You're like,
beings
oh,
are
he's
out
on
there.
his phone because that's the same thing that's happening there. And to that point, they're seeing us do it.
Yeah.
It's this whole era. I think it's just got to run its course till it gets too much, and then we'll reset and we'll cleanse. But yeah, it's so hard because then you say, oh, okay, let's make a dead zone. I saw LA once did. LA Unified School District had the pouches that were kind of like the concert pouches, but they had to be able to release them because then the concern becomes, what if there's an emergency? I mean, my mom gave me 2 quarters in case I had to call on the walk home from school. But again, it's a different time. It's a different era. And we gotta find a way to be the manager and help them curate this new world and teach them how to use these devices. And it's a lot. And
many-
counseling, it's too much. It's
But
too
how
much.
many
for you
how many
guys.
hours do you spend in putting out social media fires?
Based on, I would say I'm in the middle level, so I would say it's probably two times a week.
By middle
something
level,
like
you mean
that.
you're at the spot where the phones haven't taken over yet. Is that
So in last year it was, so the school rule, there was no school rule. Kids were able to have it in between classes. Oh gosh. And because we were trying to model what the high school, or matching what the high school was doing. And the kids just couldn't handle it. And they were late to class, they were texting, they were like zombies on their phones. And we spent as educators, as teachers, we spent more time policing that
than working.
Than right.
Yep.
So
like that's one of those things that you were talking about earlier. We expect there's certain things where like the institution is not. Maybe that's not even what I'm doing, but we're expecting the children to do more than us,
Right.
Because we're all doing it. People are walking out into traffic on their phone and like getting hit by buses. And shit.
Yeah,
And
car
we're all telling them
accidents.
you shouldn't be doing this. You cannot do this. Bad for your brain. It causes problems. And the first thing we all do is look at our phone.
Yep.
You know
Do as
what I
I
mean?
say,
Like,
not as I do.
Yeah, and we'll never fix that until we fix ourselves.
And they'll be like,
it's gonna
oh, well,
this
they're
thing we just-
developing, and
yeah.
they-
Well, your brain needs to know. And we're
or
drawing
the
out.
justification is we didn't have that. There was pagers when I was in high school, and maybe Nokia had that like
Nokia hot shit.
prepaid.
Yeah, Nokia was a bang.
But like that's all that was around, so we didn't really have it. But you had your own versions of it. You know what I mean? You pass notes.
Yeah.
You're like
Yeah,
you're
sure.
waiting. There was always something of that era. But it's
yeah.
it's intense. And the other thing too, to your point earlier, like if they send something on school, I was working for Villanova during the pandemic on like helping them with technology stuff. And I would sit on these Zoom calls with their law school, and they had people come in who were talking about law as it pertains to social media and free speech. And there was a case that they talked about during the meeting, which was a girl who didn't make it past her junior varsity tryouts for cheerleading. And so she posted a photo of her giving the middle finger, but somehow, like, because it happened off campus, like she was still had to be allowed on the team or whatever. There was some scenario where they ruled that she was allowed. Like they couldn't punish her for that, and they couldn't kick her off the team like they did because it happened off school. She has freedom of speech, and so they had to allow her back on the team as a result. Right. So the law had to like change, you know what I mean? Like, which is true. Like, and it's so crazy because you're just like, but now
it's too much power.
Yeah.
Because I would 100% like I would do the race and then flip off everybody as I left. Like you have to do it for the joke.
People stepping over the line of the school property to do whatever.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But like, it's like anything. Like, okay, we couldn't smoke on school property, so we'd find the house. We'd find the house that was right on the corner behind the church and go smoke. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, kids are going to be kids. They're going to push boundaries. That's what they do. That's what middle school and high school is about. It's about them being a microcosm of society, and we have to let them bump their heads. We can't live them in a bubble. We don't want our kids to be living in a bubble. We were just talking earlier about letting our daughters like win in a game or something like that. And like I don't let my daughter win, or I play games where it's a game of chance, like Uno, where at any given moment either of us can win. Yeah. But like that's like or Candyland. But like, it's just whatever. You gotta let them experience it. We gotta create a bubble. So we gotta let a little bit of it in. Right. Because we don't want to pretend like it's not a thing, but we don't want it to consume what we're doing so that we're not, getting kids what they need, an education and someone to listen and make sure that they're ready for the next level.
Is there in talking about the things that we hope that, because I know you guys were talking about selective, or I should say state by state education, right? Because everyone's something different about the community. Is there something that you guys see now, modern teachers, we got two great educators here, and then us two dinguses. But two great educators. Is there something that you guys wish?
You guys got a diploma.
We're trying. What's it called? Is there something that you guys wish that was adopted, like nation, like you're like, or heard of stuff that other states are doing that you wish is there anything like that
for what, the social media?
No, just in like good
general,
policy. Like, you're like, ooh, this school does that. You talked about something from LA. They tried a thing with the phone. Is there any other stuff out there? They're like, man, I wish more states I wish we had that or something. Is there anything? Or is this question?
I would to Al's point earlier about the physical education. A lot of schools, and ours included, do electives now where like you can like if you go to work out before school and go to the gym and you have like the Fitbit and some of that data, then that's your credit for a gym class. So that you're freeing your schedule up in case you want to take that AP class or you want to do this. And if you're someone who's working out anyway.
So you wear my watch and I'll wear yours.
Yeah, well, that's what they were doing. Some of the kids were putting them on their dog's collar or on the fan.
Wow.
On the fan and letting it oscillate.
Yeah, like you should get in trouble, but you get a little extra. Like that should qualify you to take a different
just being
class.
So smart.
You're like,
well, that's the other thing. You get these kids, and you got to give them props. Like they'll do something ridiculous, that's cool. And I'll just be like, I'll just be like, oh, or like you were talking earlier, like when we tell our kids not to do something, like don't go in the kitchen, and then you immediately send them in the kitchen for something, forgetting you just set that rule. But you told me not to go in the kitchen, and you catch you in that moment, and it's like kids. Because we're constantly making rules for our class, a project, and they're constantly pushing. Like I did a project where the kids had a budget and they got to go to any Spanish-speaking country, and then they had to show me how long could they stay there on that budget. And they had to think of everything: rental car, gas, whole deal, Uber, and they were like, "Well, can we just like?" Get a tent on the beach and they just would come up with the weirdest things, but that's the beauty of it. Even though that wasn't what I designed the project, I had to kind of case by case it and allow latitude for them thinking outside the box.
That's it.
I don't want them. I don't know everything.
I mean, you probably the concept of thinking outside the box. Right. You have to get excited when you find a student that's thinking outside the box, right?
That's right. No,
And you got to provide them the opportunity to show you that they might know more than you on a topic.
right. So, but the traditional way of teaching is
Doesn't allow
having
that.
and
In the box.
like in the box.
Yeah.
It's the 3 hours of let's just break it down to college. That's the traditional way of learning. You're sitting down and just listening to a teacher speak, and you go at your own will to go to the bathroom if you want to. But you'll lose kids that way.
Yeah.
And
If
I
it
think
worked
you'll
for
lose adults,
Archimedes,
too.
it should work for you.
I know. But to the point that you asked the question before about things to change, and it kind of goes with it's the testing. There's so much drive in the testing, and that we
the actual result of the testing, right?
and
You
then
gotta
our
get good results to get money.
evaluations kind of go with that too. So we're teaching to the test. So, and I think the kids are stressed because am I going to get the right score that I need to take that advanced class or that AP course in high school? And then for teachers, a lot of them are stressed too because they're teaching kids of special education, middle of the road learners. You've got higher level students, and if the kids aren't hitting that specific score or showing growth, that somehow is a reflection on the teacher. So as a counselor, I'm like, well, that has nothing to do with me, but it does because it hits the whole building score as well.
Should testing the way it's done now, where you get something with a bunch of questions and you fill out and turn it back in any form? Are you pro-testing, anti-testing?
No, I'm
Would you-
anti-testing.
I think
You think
find it
testing,
hard
all
pressed.
forms of testing,
But
is,
that's where the
is-
budget comes from, unfortunately.
And that's putting things in a box. Like we're talking about,
Yeah.
they want things in a digestible box so they can
funding,
look at
yeah.
data and we can have something, it's like anything. It's just, that's one
But
thing
that's-
I would change is I wish that we had a system in which there was a way, like, even testing now, when I tested a kid, I give them a multiple choice, like Google form thing, because it's easy, quick. I can get them immediate feedback. So they're not waiting for feedback. But then there's a second part where they have to sit down with me doing a 60-second interview. And I get to pull out some of the questions and say, talk to me about how you chose that one out of the other three. And they have to then efficiently tell me why. And if they can't tell me why, then that's a separate score. And now I can make a note to say, okay, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, even a broken clock is right twice a day, but you didn't really know. So it gives me the warm and fuzzies. And it somehow, but it's like, there's got to be a balance.
What would be?
But it's hard.
What would it be? The substitute to testing? Like if you didn't do tests, how do you know that Albert's a good student and he's getting this and Theodore is not? How are you going to know that?
So there is something. What is it? It's not choice learning. It's almost like there's like a menu of sorts. So, for example, and some teachers do this to present day, and it might be something where you're writing a song about whatever the concept is, or to hit that standard. And there's parameters that the teacher is going to be grading for that specific assignment.
So by writing a song, they're like telling you what they know about
Correct.
the great
And they're doing
volcanoes
and
or
if they're
whatever.
writing it through time signature, then they're factoring in math,
Yep.
and they're doing so
Okay.
like they're the kids who can't pass because there are these keystone tests in Pennsylvania. And in theory, the goal was that if you can't pass it, you can't graduate. But so after so many times of taking it, if you still don't pass, what about those kids that are never going to pass it? And they had to start coming up with like a choice board menu.
Does that make more
alternatives.
work for the teacher or less work for the teacher?
Well, this part is for the
like,
state.
It's a
I feel
great
like there's like this
question.
American Idol type of situation where the kid's singing about volcanoes and shit.
It depends on the teacher. It depends on the teacher, because that teacher might feel like, no, I this is my way of showing that
Of determining
that the
if you're
kids
okay.
have mastered that subject or not, or that
Okay.
that level of material.
All right.
So I feel like it's not more work, but then again, who's to say that the traditional teacher of just giving that unit test, is that a wrong thing? I don't think it's a wrong thing. It fits for what they're teaching and how they want to deliver.
Okay, and
show
you
mastery.
believe in this teacher, so their system works.
Yep.
And if they pass Mr. Yoder's stuff, then and he gives them the blessing, they can go to the next class.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
Because you're
Actually,
putting
I have a
on
question.
professional.
Now, this is not on the counseling side, so I'm
Yeah.
thinking more high school. I think that they should be learning classes. There should be classes and an opportunity for them to learn how to buy a house, how to invest money, how to do because we learn here's what's on your shirt? Right? But do people at home know what's on Jay's shirt right now? How many people don't know what that is? That is 3.14. 3.14. But I learned all about pi r squared. Haven't used it once, right?
Did you get pied in the face? Because that's how they show it. That's another way that
That's how they do it. They show it
to make it fun.
Okay. But in real life, when I learned to buy a house, I learned from the person who was making money off me buying the house. That's who taught me how to buy a house. I feel like in school you could replace pi r square with interest rates and down payments and shit like
here's
that.
the problem. The problem is if there's no stake in the game at that point, they're not going to, even though it will be useful to them potentially in 15 years, I think you were more apt to learn it from that person because you were in the moment with it. You know, like we don't learn to sew a button anymore. We don't learn some of these things. But like it's hard because if you made everybody do that, not everybody's gonna, you know.
Well, one I've never used, right? Pi r squared I've never used.
Yeah. Well, that you know of.
That I know.
But like, you know,
You're using it right now.
Yeah,
That's why you're sitting the way you're sitting.
Yeah, I'm talking about it right now.
No,
But
you're
my house, and they can learn how like if you 9.8 meters per second squared, that's the rate at which something falls, right? I don't ever use that. I remember it.
Yeah.
Because the teacher I had was a badass teacher, but I don't use it at all. You could learn how credit cards work and
the
what
Magna
an
Carta
interest
was
rate
signed
is,
in 1215.
and what an interest rate is. And
Why is that?
Everyone say their favorite fact. Go ahead. Come on. Everyone around. Go ahead. Say it.
But it's true. He's right. There's like,
Yeah.
You know, but I don't use any of that stuff. You could learn how to invest money, how to manage the debt, and how to find your own credit score, and how to purchase a home, and how to live without
every
fucking
school,
back pain.
every
I
school
mean,
has that
these
class
things-
though. I know specifically.
Which one is that?
So it has the class for like we have a math and an economics course. There's an everyday math course that's for kids when they get to 11th and 12th grade when they're done taking
I had
their
that-
like
I
basic
had that
requirements.
class. Yeah, that
so
was
so a guy retired, Mr. Barr, had been teaching it at the high school forever. And what does he do? Learn to read contracts. What is that APR
Okay,
rate?
and that guy's
and
a
so,
bad, that guy's
but
a
the
badass.
kids who are getting that course are probably the ones who need it. The ones who maybe aren't going off to college, but they need to be ready for the real world because when they're done with high school, they're going to be working a job. And so that course was geared. So and then there was an economics course taught by a social studies teacher who talked about mortgage rates. But does everybody doesn't get filtered
that should
into
be-
those. But the fact that they're there, I think, is important because the kids who might need them the most and the ones who are well off and whatever, they're going to get it when they're ready for it, too. I think is the thinking.
Do you get a say in like a lot of curriculum, or like what they learn, or does that?
Not
Man,
so
crack that motherfucker, bro.
Not so much. Are you sure?
Crack it.
I don't want to
I'm
hurt
gonna
your
do it too.
feelings
I'm
if
gonna do it
I
too.
did it too
Yeah,
hard.
but, there you go. Yeah,
All right.
there we go.
It's like coughing and let's sneeze
Summer.
at the same
It's summer.
time.
Maybe by the time this airs,
So-
it's summer.
No, I don't have so much a say with that, but more behind the scenes stuff I do.
Okay.
So like the whole school-wide behavior piece of it.
Bullying prevention.
Bullying prevention, suicide prevention, postvention, all of those things. But back to your point, Jay, you were talking about like with kids and what they get from economics class or what they get from any course. Quite frankly, and going back to attention span, what do you remember the most of any course that you took? You remember the beginning and you remember the end of it, of the actual course or the lesson of the day. It's usually all the fluff in the middle is one ear out the other.
Yep.
For the most part. And when kids come to me, and when I was a special education teacher, they would just curse about that given teacher. They would be really upset about the content or why do I need this? It doesn't matter. And I would say to them, you're right. It doesn't matter at all. Does it matter if you know pi and 25 of the digits associated with it? No. But the important piece is that you started learning it and you have to take it to the finish line. So that's what it's all about. And if you can do that for every single assignment you have, even if you didn't get anything out of the assignment, is irrelevant because it's about the life skill of starting something and finishing something.
That's a big skill.
That's for me, that's what I try to teach the kids. That's the biggest lesson.
Well, like as a Latin teacher, I get it all the time. Why are we learning Latin? What's the
And
point?
it doesn't matter.
And I'll tell you what, I'll be like, hey man, you're not. I don't expect you to be a Latin scholar, but like I was like, oh, do you go to the gym? Yeah. I'm like, oh, so when are you going to be in the Olympics? 20 what? He's like, what do you mean the Olympics? I'm like, well, why are you going to the gym if you're not going to be in the Olympics?
Super
I
Bowl.
was like, your brain has to be going to the
Super
gym.
Bowl, same thing.
Yeah,
Hey,
that's right.
Roman numerals, baby. Let's get into it.
That's it. But you're taking your brain to the gym is my argument, and the same thing is what you're getting at.
Yeah.
There are
still learning
processes
things, yeah.
happening, and it's like how guys and girls today are specializing in sports early. So instead of being an athlete for all sports, they're doing this. And the problem is, they're not training all of the little muscles that maybe if they were a wrestler in the winter, they would get less hurt when they were in season for the other sports because those muscles aren't in atrophy. Okay. And that's what's happening with your brain because they say people who know more than one language, for example, as you get older, you can offset dementia and Alzheimer's by up to 5 to 10 years if you know another language because your brain, the neural pathways, it's like think of if you live near the woods and there's a path there. If you don't walk on that path every day, what's going to happen? It's going to get overgrown, and that's what happens to our brain. So if we're not having to remember 20 digits of pi, like we're just not we're going to have to remember people's phone numbers or our account number one day, and it might be that many digits.
True.
And we want to know that we've walked that path.
Okay, I got this is the next best great question for
This will be a good end.
This
Here we
is
go.
good. When I was in high school, we had this thing called in-school suspension. Do they still have that?
hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, so you like something happens, and you go sit in this room, and you sit there and you just like shut the fuck up.
Yep.
Till,
No windows, right?
Huh?
No windows.
No windows either.
Oh, these rooms had windows.
How do you know?
And was
I want
the
to know why
teacher-
Albert knows about
Was the
this.
proctor or whoever was in there, were they attractive? That's a big piece.
No, they weren't.
Usually
It
not.
was
never.
It was a guy. It was a
Do you remember
dude.
Helen? Do you remember Helen from the?
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
How can you?
It was
forget
actually a
that?
dude who couldn't be
But
the
she
wood
was-
She
shop
looked
teacher.
like a Helen.
But she was attractive. I have different tastes than you do.
Okay,
sorry,
you
Ellen.
bump in there. No, it was this
I'm a
dude who.
lover.
Okay, we had this in-school suspension room, and it was this dude who actually was a woodshop teacher, but he couldn't be the woodshop teacher because the good woodshop teacher was there. And this guy had this job for like 35 years, and he was a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
And you would get in trouble or you get in a fight and be like, you have 3 days was like the minimum in-school suspension. You go to school at 7:30, school started at 8, and you'd be there till 4 o'clock every day.
Yes.
Some of the desks had like this like barricade on them. And then they got this thing in our school where if you were a bad enough kid, they put your name on this list. And if you had to be like disciplined well enough, you just went right to suspension.
Okay.
And you had to sit in that fucking room.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the worst fucking thing you could ever do to someone short of smacking their hand for being left-handed or whatever.
And
the fuck.
Saturday detention.
Saturday detention. And I think that's incredibly fucked up. To a young mind who is just being a mind, they're just thinking, they're learning, they're smelling things, they're hitting puberty, they're making friends, they're losing friends, they think they like a girl, they think they like a boy, whatever it is, they got all this stuff going on. And I feel like they're just being human. And then it's like, you're too human right now. You are too much of a human fucking being. And it's too much for what we like between these four walls.
What
So we're gonna
they've
send you here.
done to your point now in
And then-
elementary, they stopped taking away recess because they used to take away recess from the elementary
That's
kids.
bad. Yeah.
So now they don't do that anymore. To your point, which is like, well, they still need to be able to play, but that was the one thing that teachers had. They could hold you back. That was like the in-school suspension of elementary
Yeah.
was
Well, I mean,
holding
I
you
think-
back from recess. But I think to your point, you're right. Like that
You're
is
14. You're 14. You're
But what do you
sitting
do
down all
instead?
day.
But there's still kids that are, if you're going to break a school rule, there needs to be a so.
I agree.
there
I
needs to
agree
be
with that. I
something.
agree with that. I think this is you. You're the expert. What do you got?
I don't know if I'm the expert, but then the other side of it is restorative practice, and that's
Restorative
trying
justice.
Yeah, and
Practice justice. Tomato.
Yeah, and it's having kids have that teachable lesson without being stuck in that room or being sent home for out of school suspension. So if kids can reflect on what they're doing and maybe doing something physical, which is something they don't like to do, and they're killing two birds with one stone. Let's just say it was defacing property within school, but now they're cleaning everything up. They're cleaning all the lockers up, and they're doing that for a chunk of the day. I think that's more appropriate than them sitting.
I mean,
in
those
school
practices
suspension.
are
I like that.
those practices are so huge, and they really, I think, are transformative because if they have an issue with that person, then the
Yep.
mediation, the restorative practices and every case is a little different because, like you said, defacing property. All right, well then let's help you restore that because another person was supposed to be here tonight, Brad, who couldn't make it. His thing that he's always said that I've internalized is you gotta fall on the sword. You gotta let these kids have an opportunity to fall on the sword and prove that they can do better and that they are worthy of forgiveness.
Right.
And that was something that he said to me that I take with me as a parent now too, because I'm like, I have to own up to my own mistakes. I have to let them have the opportunity, because everybody wants to root for kids.
Yep.
We want to root every teacher, educator, principal, even the most curmudgeon-y one who you would think of, the Miss Krabappels and Principal Skinners of the world. They really wanted Bart to be able to do better.
Right.
And like, we want to give opportunities for kids. And so I think the practices, like you said, the more we can do of those and the less we can do of what you experienced, it's
that
huge.
in-school suspension is a motherfucker.
Well, even Saturday.
It's worse than being sent home.
I
Well,
think
we talk about
Saturday's
managing
worse.
that energy. So now you take, they're like 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
They got a little within reason, right? 3 kids beating up 1 kid. I mean, okay, what are you doing? You know, there's certain things. But when I was in school, it was such like dumb things, like you know, you're walking down the hall and you were wearing your hat or something.
Right.
That was a big deal in my school, and you would go to suspension. You don't deserve that. Like you, when you're in the airport or when you're in the hospital, you don't just get sent to suspension. Now, somebody say, "Oh, you go to jail," and I don't think that that's really the same thing here. You're just being a human being, right? And then you just put them in this box. Now the energy is heightened because now they're just sitting in this box. I woke up and I came to school just marinating.
And who's to say they're not going to do that again?
Yeah.
The same behavior. the
Or,
same
or
infraction.
emerge with anger. There was no rehabilitative services in there.
Sure.
And the goal wasn't to, you're going to come down here, we're going to send you out there a little bit better.
Right.
It's not a rehabilitative thing. It's straight punishment.
Yeah.
This is going to hurt. So you're going to walk out with anger. You're going to walk out
Right.
like vengeful. You're not going to walk out like, I'm better now. I don't think.
And it depends on what the behavioral infraction is.
Right.
So what did you just say? It was 3 kids on 1.
Beating the shit out of a kid, that's different. Yeah.
That to me, that's a police issue. Now that's an assault issue.
Or something becomes sexual, right? It's hard to do something restorative. The restorative piece would be, well, does that mean you owe money? Does that mean you have to do time?
Yeah.
Like, what is it
How do
writing
you-
a thank you or thank you? An
Apology.
apology. No, thank you. And that wasn't trying to be funny at all. That was all natural, just so you guys know.
No, but you're right. No, because that becomes case by case, and that's
it.
when it gets within public education or any organization, when you can't put something in a neat box or
Case by
have a
case
flow
stuff,
chart
right.
for
Yep,
things.
yep.
And that's the problem. We're dealing with everybody. Free and public education. That's
Yeah.
what we're trying to do, and it becomes so difficult to do that. But I think if we keep the child at the core and we do our best with the majority of them, then, you know, the hard part is you can't catch everyone. And that's what they try to do with Bush and No Child Left Behind. And that mantra was, you know, how do we, and we got it, you know, we can always do better. And I think restorative practices are a good push, more of that, less of that.
And one thing for you guys, I do understand that I'm on this side, right? You guys are in it. You're there. Everything's
I
different.
like looking down on you, by the way. I feel like I'm looking down on you.
But and I also know that you could do everything that I think is perfect, and even if it was perfect, there's a percentage of the people involved that are going to complain.
Oh, there's always
There's going to be people who go, this isn't good enough. This is not good enough. I need more. I need more. I need more. So I do understand that you guys are like really pushing a stone up a hill because they're just going to find something else you're not doing enough of. You didn't do enough.
Well, that's just
oh,
it.
well, you don't want testing, and we don't want homework, and we don't want this, and we don't want that, and we should get this. And it's like,
it's a lot of throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
yeah,
too.
yeah.
It's
Like,
just
what do you
well, we
want
need
from
to
us?
throw
Like, I
everything
know
out.
that
Is everything trash?
I mean, it's a very thankless job. People treat teachers not that well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's what it is.
I didn't treat my teachers well. It's a shock that I'm a teacher.
Yeah, I didn't treat my teachers
I was
well.
not a good
I would love to see some restorative justice for the crappy parents that, no, not for your schools. I'm sure every parent at the schools you guys work at is absolutely wonderful.
Yes, I'm one of them.
Obviously. But for parents that you might have to deal with directly in terms of teachers or counselors, you know, that's where like there should be something that us as a community goes like, hey, when the parent's wrong, they have to come in and do, you know what I mean?
Right.
Hey, Saturday detention, you guys get in here.
Well, yeah.
You're yelling about nonsense. Or
Well, the Saturday's out of hand because I sometimes, my wife and I sometimes proctor it because it's great. Sit there for 3 hours. You just got to
Hourly
keep them
rate
in
too,
line.
right?
Yeah, you get a good, decent pay for it. And you finally get paid for grading. The grading I'd
not
be doing at home for
curriculum.
free.
It's hourly rate, right?
It's
No
hourly
wonder
rate.
you do
Yes,
it. I
absolutely.
gotcha.
But these kids roll in with no like sense of respect. Like I had a kid like with a
oh
Wawa
my God.
Sizzly hanging out of his thing.
hell yeah.
I'm like, yo, you can't have that. You got to put that away. And he's like, what? I can't have my breakfast. I'm like, I'm sorry. are you here for the student of the month breakfast or Saturday detention? Because like the gall of some of the kids sometimes.
Oh yeah,
there's beer in the back. Why don't you come on in?
just
Put
come
the
on
sandwich
in.
down.
Like,
What are you
it's just
doing?
like it's so I think a lot of us think about what we had to go through as kids, just like us as parents.
Yeah.
We think about the things that happened to us, and it's a different time,
Right.
And so you can't put on the you're going to sit at that table till that plate is clean, and that's the same way of the ISS in school now. So just as us as parents, and I think that's what changed for me as a teacher is when I became a parent too.
Yeah.
That was interesting how I became more reflective.
What's ISS?
in school suspension.
Oh,
That's
okay.
in the box.
Sorry, yeah, I got you.
The lingo
I didn't think I still had them. You guys got all
with
hip on them.
parents
versus
you know,
OSS.
There are great parents out there, and
Yeah.
and I mean
There's a couple of them right here.
that's exactly
I hear
right.
that.
And for the most part, though, it's not. You have school life, and you have upholding these specific rules and these challenges for kids, where that might be undone by parents because what they teach or what they believe in at home is very different in the school setting. So you have this half of the day the day is with us, and then they go home and everything's undone. And in the counselor role, I see a lot of that. And it's trying to, because I have to have that relationship with the parent, with the student, with the teacher, with the principal, with everybody involved. So you have a lot of different opinions, and you have a lot of different ways you can say something. So whether it's a whole group meeting with all of these people, if the parents show, or you're doing it virtually, which is a whole nother conversation of just where education has turned because of COVID. But having those hard conversations with parents to say, listen, I'm not trying to offend you or anything, but just understand that in school, this is working. And then trying to share that without tarnishing that relationship.
And how do you you have to make them not wrong. You have to make everybody in the
That's it.
conversation not wrong.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens. It becomes this, and that's just good
It's like
advice, like relationship advice, whatever.
Yeah.
Like how do you have hard conversations and not make the other person wrong?
Right.
And you feel like you're walking on eggshells. And like anytime I write an email to a parent, the one thing I would change, like Neil, you asked earlier, I would change. If I'm going back to teaching at the secondary level next year, like I strongly dislike the grade grubbing for National Honor Society. Well, I wanted a 90. I have a 91.4.
yeah.
Well, that's what you earned.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
well,
you
you
talked about
gave
that
me. I
once
didn't
before.
give you
You-
anything. This is
You're
what you
stickler for that,
earned.
yeah. But that,
And I just have such a hard time with those conversations where parents are emailing me, almost like just wanting me. The tone of the message is just give them
like it's a free bottle of hand sanitizer at
round
the
it up.
rental
Just
car.
round it
Yeah,
do
here's
it.
just, yeah.
It's
You want
just
some
a
sanitizer?
number.
Yeah.
Is there any extra
What
credit
if pi was
they can do?
3.15? Would it be the end of the world?
Yeah. They remember 25
Maybe the
was
Leaning
wrong
Tower
digit,
pizza
but
would
they
have been
remembered it.
straight. I
Yeah.
don't know, but like, I have a beef with that. So I have a hard time because
I know
you'll
you
see my
you know,
attitude.
You've said this like multiple times, so that
changes.
means that this is something that really gets you.
And you'll
because-
see it because the minute it's hit, the minute anybody who's a future student of mine listen to this, like you'll see it. You talk to me about your grade and you come at me with you wanted a 92, but you got a 91, then hey, I'd have been like, well, that's a great job on that 91. And part of it's like, I get it because I remember being upset in college. I ended up with a 3.84. And if you had a 3.85, you got summa cum laude. Right. And I didn't get it.
Damn,
And I
dude.
thought it was the end of my world. And
You
it
failed,
doesn't
Jay. Is what
matter.
happened. You failed.
But that's what happens with parenting.
That's what you
Whatever your
failed.
parents trope about, like, yell at you about is probably what they were doing and
Right.
they're projecting.
Of
on
course. Oh
you.
my gosh, parents are the.
But
Parents are the
that's my
projectors
pet
of life.
peeve, as I've always said. Because I remember the one time I got an email right before we recorded, and I came in, and I was so hot about
Yeah. Oh, you came in here hot.
this email on a Sunday that I shouldn't have read, which is what.
As I
Alex
said,
told
that's why
me.
you're
He
reading that
says,
shit.
"I
Now, what do you
read
think?
that."
No, what's you get one more chance to change it all, or not change it all, but
To change everything.
just throw it out there.
Homeschool.
What's-
No. Homeschool can work for kids. Don't get me wrong, but if I can change anything, I don't know. It's
Okay. There's too many layers. There's too much.
There's a lot of things,
Okay.
and it's just weird that we have taken all of us. We've taken a specific path in this world, and we landed where we are right now. And I couldn't say back in college, am I going to be a school counselor? Back then, I would be like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't think I would be in education. if I looked at myself in the mirror back then. And now in present time, I love my job. I really do. But there are times, clearly in this beautiful gray beard, where it's stressful. And a lot of it is those multi-layers of things that we encounter every single day. But you just do it, you know? It's you're an actor, you're a salesman, you're a school nurse, or a nurse. You're everything in the role that we are. But to change everything, I mean, I would say if we can go back in time and get rid of the technology piece, the standardized testing, I think is, in my opinion, a waste of time. But you know, being a realist, that's where the funding comes from. So, yeah,
it's like one of those things when we're often taught, like, if you're going to present an issue, you have to present a solution.
Don't bring me a dead cat without bringing me a shovel.
Yeah,
that's it.
I had a boss used to say that.
Dude,
Don't
yeah.
bring me a dead cat without bringing me a shovel.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
dude, this was a great episode, man. Appreciate you.
got
coming
deep,
by.
man. You got deep, man.
It was good. Yeah, great question.
I'm always going deep, but are you guys ready for it? You know,
That's the other podcast we do.
oh, that's what you were talking. I wasn't talking about that.
I will say,
weird.
It was weird being in the seat, and I think one, I like the perspective. I like that. I feel like I'm a little taller than you.
Oh, okay. All right.
Two,
Yeah, for the audio listeners at home, they're actually on two giant desks, both Noah and Jay. They're down.
how distracting it was to look at that board. Because it's like looking at a middle school notebook.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, because
Yeah,
it's
you're
like
exactly
doodles.
right.
There's a penis up there.
Yeah.
Honor
That's about
student,
right.
You know what I
seventh
mean?
grade,
Like that's mine that just got up there. So,
Militarian.
but like, so it's like so distracting because I would look up and I'd want to start laughing at that penis.
I know.
And then I'm like trying. He's like talking about restorative justice.
Yeah. I'm like,
No
yeah.
wonder
we'll talk
you
about
teach
these classes.
in
Can we get a
education.
stop?
That's the reason why.
That's it. But I'm just like dying up here. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I wonder Al wanted to switch seats.
Yeah. There's a better life over here.
Well, good. Well, yeah.
Well,
Thank
thanks.
you so much.
All right.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being on, brother.
Seriously, Dad? Seriously?
Thank you for listening to the dads, for once. Give these daddies a break. And maybe follow, subscribe, like, and comment to the dads on Instagram and YouTube at Seriously Dad Pod. Rate and review Seriously Dad Podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Seriously, Dad?
How you doing? This is Neil Wood from the Cult of Us podcast, speaking on behalf of Drop 10 Media Network, the network you're currently listening to. Make sure to check out all the other podcasts on the network. You can go to drop10.com to check them all out. Make sure to like, subscribe on everything that you see Drop 10 on. We appreciate it. Go to drop10.com now.
This has been a Drop Tent Media production.